Most Americans are unaware of the Banana Wars. These were a series of American military interventions in Latin America a century ago to support American business interests. The United States treated Latin American nations as colonies, and still does by using covert methods. Control is maintained with bribery, blackmail, assassinations, sanctions, and election rigging. This sometimes fails and a coup is required. The role of the United States usually remains hidden in these regime changes, but sometimes it becomes obvious, like in the 2009 coup in Honduras. When American President Franklin Roosevelt entered office in 1933, he sought to improve Latin American relations with his good neighbor policy, based on the principle of non-interventionism. One reason for the change was that Roosevelt wanted Latin American states to become allies in his effort to establish the United States as a world superpower by weakening other world powers. Japan had proclaimed a, quote, Monroe Doctrine of the Orient to justify its expanding colonization in East Asia. Nazi Germany expressed desires to expand eastward. Washington could hardly condemn aggression in the world if it used its military in Latin America. As a result, Roosevelt withdrew most American troops from Latin America and denounced other world powers for colonial rule. However, Roosevelt worked with his friends on Wall Street to covertly rule Latin America using bribery, blackmail, election riggings, sanctions, and assassinations. Teams were formed with experts in this secret manipulation, as explained in the great 2004 book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. These methods of covert control were usually successful, but failed in nations like Cuba and Venezuela. They failed in Honduras after Manuel Zelaya was elected president in 2006. He began fighting a corrupt oligarchy that treated workers like slaves. Zelaya raised the minimum wage by 60% and increased teacher salaries and public pensions. He also criticized America's endless war on drugs that caused much violence and complained that wealthy Hondurans profited from the cocaine trade. The United States maintains an air base at Soto Cano, 50 miles north of the Honduran capital. It was established to fight a secret war in nearby Nicaragua in the 1980s, yet remains with 1,000 Americans, along with 19 helicopters, to help rule the region. This allows American personnel, equipment, and weaponry to be flown in to bypass Honduran customs offices. They are then distributed where needed in Latin America by truck or helicopter. President Zelaya was uncomfortable with this base since he knew its primary mission was not disaster relief, as the Americans assert. Honduras needs a new commercial airport, but lacked funds to build one. The main airport in Honduras is one of the most dangerous in the world due to nearby mountains and a short runway. 10 planes had crashed the previous decade, killing hundreds. The obvious solution was to convert Soto Cano into a commercial airport. President Zelaya began promoting this idea that upset the American empire. In June 2008, U.S. Ambassador Charles Ford wrote that the United States would keep, quote, a low public profile while working to protect U.S. security interests at Soto Cano. The Americans stalled Zelaya's efforts, but he was popular and persistent, so had to be removed. The U.S. military had close relations with the Honduran military since it provides most equipment and training. The names of all the coup plotters remain secret and the exact American role is unclear, but Honduran officers would not have acted without assurances of American support. Communications in Honduras are monitored by the Americans so they would know if a coup was underway. It is unclear if President Obama and his Secretary of State Hillary Clinton approved the coup, but they did nothing once it began. On June 28, 2009, the Honduran military stormed President Zelaya's home while he slept, grabbed their nation's popular democratically elected president, and hauled him to the American Soto Cano Air Base. He was placed on the presidential jet and flown into exile. The U.S. military did not intervene, claiming later they didn't know a coup was underway. The people of Honduras knew what happened and engaged in protests and riots. The Organization of American States and the United Nations quickly denounced the coup and demanded that President Zelaya be reinstated.
I am ashamed that this coup has taken place in Central America during my presidency here at the General Assembly. This is a throwback to another era that we had hoped was now a distant nightmare. Latin America and the Caribbean have the ignominious record of being the region with the most number of military coups in the world. This is a record that has no place in the 21st century.
American Secretary of State Hillary Clinton held a press conference the day after the coup. While she joined world leaders in condemning the coup, she refused to commit the United States to a restoration of the democratically elected president of Honduras. She met with President Zelaya in Washington to ease tensions in Honduras and to suggest a plan was underway. President Obama openly stated that the United States did not accept the coup.
President Zelaya was democratically elected. He had not yet completed his term. We believe that the coup was not legal, and that President Zelaya remains the president of Honduras, the democratically elected president there. In that, we have joined all the countries in the region, including Colombia and the Organization of American States. I think it would be a terrible precedent if we start moving backwards into the era in which we are seeing military coups as a means of political transition.
An article by Mark Weisbrot appeared in the Los Angeles Times a few days later, link below, that explained exactly how President Obama could peacefully reinstate Zelaya. Quote, "He could have the U.S. Treasury freeze the coup leaders' personal bank accounts and the assets of the coup leaders and their supporters, and deny them visas into the United States. He could also impose trade sanctions, since 70% of Honduran exports go to the United States. He would have worldwide support for such steps. Both the Organization of American States and the UN General Assembly have voted unanimously to demand the immediate and unconditional reinstatement of Zelaya." Mr. Weisbrot did not mention a bold solution. In 1988, the Ready Battalion of the 82nd Airborne was flown to Honduras within hours to intimidate Nicaragua. This battalion could fly to Soto Cano with President Zelaya and escort him back into power. The Honduran military would not attempt to stop the Americans, while crowds cheered. President Obama would be praised by world leaders and finally earn his Nobel Peace Prize. But nothing happened, as Secretary Clinton insisted on avoiding confrontations.
We have consistently urged all parties to avoid any provocative action that could lead to violence. President Zelaya's effort to reach the border is reckless. It does not contribute to the broader efforts to restore democratic and constitutional order in the Honduras crisis. So we urge President Zelaya and all other parties to reaffirm their commitment to a negotiated, peaceful solution to the integrity of Honduran democracy and the safety and well-being of the Honduran people.
It was later revealed in leaked emails that wealthy Hondurans had hired a lobbyist to secretly meet with Clinton. See the article linked below. Given that Clinton frequently solicited bribes to be legally laundered through the Clinton Foundation, money might have been paid. American military aid continued to Honduras in violation of American law that requires its suspension if a military overthrows its government. Meanwhile, strikes and protests continued in Honduras, causing chaos while its murder rate became the world's highest. A surge of refugees moved north through Mexico into the United States. The American people were unaware that its own government caused this disaster, as corporate media promoted propaganda that a coup was necessary.
Roger Noriega served in the Bush administration as the State Department's top policymaker for Latin America. Noriega says the court and the military had no choice but to react against Mr. Zelaya.
He was going against the rule of law for weeks, and we saw this coming. And unfortunately, I think that the United States has reacted a little too late in this process, and the OAS did not react at all.
President Zelaya never returned to power in Honduras. An American-friendly president was selected and elected to replace him. The coup was a disaster for Hondurans, but a victory for the American empire, although American cities were flooded with refugees. The Soto Cano Air Base continues to grow in size to secretly rule the region.